She inherited only a ruined farm. But the secret in the barn made her a millionaire. Sharon Mitchell clutched to her chest the yellowed letter that had arrived 3 days earlier, while her 5 small children played on the dirt floor of the rented room. At 28, she faced the despair of having lost her cleaning job at the supermarket and being unable to pay even the 2 months of overdue rent. The letter brought news that seemed impossible. She had inherited the farm from her great-aunt Beatrice, a woman she had met only once in childhood and who had passed away without other close relatives. According to the notary, the property was in the countryside of Oklahoma, 200 kilometers from Dallas, where Sharon lived with the children in increasingly difficult conditions. "Mom, are you really going to take us to live on a farm?" asked Daniel, the eldest son at 9 years old, his brown eyes shining with curiosity mixed with worry. Sharon looked at him, then at the other 4. 7-year-old Emily, the 5-year-old twins John Michael and Joseph Andrew, and little Mary Catherine, still a baby of just 18 months, whom she constantly carried in her arms. They all depended on her, and she had no more options. "We'll try, son. We have no other choice here in the city," she replied, trying to sound more confident than she felt. The landlord of the room had given an ultimatum: either pay everything by the end of the week, or they would have to leave. The severance money from her job barely covered food for the children, let alone paying off the accumulated debts. The inherited farm represented the only hope, even if it was a leap in the dark. 3 days later, Sharon packed the family's few belongings into 2 old suitcases and some plastic bags. She sold the used furniture for a pittance to get money for the bus tickets. The trip to the small town of St. Rose Creek was long and tiring, with the children restless and hungry. When they finally got off at the small town's bus station, Sharon asked for directions to Beatrice Farm. The taxi driver, an elderly man with graying hair named Sebastian, looked at her with an expression of surprise and pity. "Are you sure you want to go there, ma'am? That property has been abandoned for over 10 years. Since Mrs. Beatrice passed, no one has set foot there." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. Sharon felt her heart tighten, but she kept her determination. She paid the taxi driver and asked him to take them there, even if it was just to see the place. The dirt road was full of potholes and dust, and as they moved away from town, the landscape became increasingly arid and desolate. After a 40-minute drive, the taxi stopped in front of a rusty gate hanging on crooked posts. In the background, in the middle of the dry land covered with sun-scorched grass, stood an old wooden structure that looked more like it was about to collapse. "That there is the main barn," explained Sebastian, pointing to the structure. "The farmhouse burned down a few years ago. Only that is left." Sharon got out of the car with the baby in her arms and helped the other children out. The hot, dry wind kicked up small clouds of dust, and the silence of the place was broken only by the creaking of the old barn wood swaying in the breeze. "Mom, are we really going to live here?" whispered Emily, clutching her mother's skirt. "This is where we will restart our lives," said Sharon, more to convince herself than to reassure her daughter. Sebastian helped her unload the luggage, and with evident pity in his eyes, offered to take them back to town. But Sharon politely refused. She had burned all her bridges in Dallas and had no money to return nor any place to go. After the taxi drove away, kicking up a cloud of red dust, Sharon was left alone with the 5 children in the midst of that desolation. The sun was setting, tinting the sky orange, and she urgently needed to find a place for the children to sleep. The barn, despite its precarious appearance, seemed structurally more solid than she expected. The wooden walls were worn by time, but still firm. The roof had a few broken tiles through which sunlight entered in golden beams full of dust. Inside the barn, Sharon found some old furniture covered by dusty sheets, a large solid wood table, some chairs, and at the back, an old wrought-iron double bed frame. It was rustic and dirty, but it could serve as temporary shelter. "Children, let's clean this place and make our new home," she announced, taking the black scarf off her head and tying up her hair. "Daniel, you're the man of the house now. I need you to help me take care of your siblings." The first weeks were the hardest of Sharon's life. Without electricity or running water, she had to improvise everything. She used candles to light the nights and carried water from an old well she found at the back of the property, after testing if it was still clean. To cook, she got an old gas stove in town in exchange for a gold bracelet that was her only piece of jewelry. The bathroom was the biggest challenge. She had to build a basic outhouse and teach the children to adapt to the new reality. Daniel, despite his young age, proved to be a valuable companion. He helped take care of his younger siblings, especially when Sharon needed to go to town for supplies or to try to resolve bureaucratic matters of the inheritance. It was during one of these trips to town that she discovered the first major problem. The farm had a 5-year backlog of unpaid property taxes. The amount was far beyond her means, and if not paid off within 6 months, the property would be auctioned. "Ma'am, you'll need at least $15,000 to settle everything," explained the county clerk, a middle-aged man with thick glasses. "Besides that, there are sanitation issues. The health inspector could come here at any time and condemn the place for not having adequate living conditions." Sharon left the county office with a heavy heart. $15,000 was a fortune she didn't have and couldn't possibly gather so quickly. But giving up meant returning to total destitution, and that she could not allow. Back at the farm, she found the children playing near the barn under Daniel's care. But something was different. Emily came running to her with eyes wide with fright. "Mom, there's a strange man who was watching us from the road," said the girl, pointing toward the gate. Sharon looked and saw a pickup truck parked outside the property. A man in a hat and sunglasses was leaning against the hood, clearly observing the place. When he noticed he'd been seen, he got into the vehicle and drove away quickly. That was the first of several strange appearances. In the following days, different cars would drive slowly down the road in front of the farm, always with people who seemed to be studying the land. Sharon began to get worried, but didn't know what to do. The situation became even more complicated when little John Michael developed a severe cough that wouldn't improve. The constant dust from the dry land and the precarious living conditions were affecting the child's health. With no money for a private doctor and the town clinic operating only 2 days a week, Sharon faced days of anguish. It was around that time that she met Mrs. Dorothy, a 70-year-old lady who lived on a small neighboring property and took pity on the family's situation. Dorothy brought fresh milk every morning for the children and offered practical advice on how to survive in the countryside. "Honey, you've got courage coming out here with all these children, but you need to be careful," the lady warned, as she watched John Michael playing with a persistent cough. "This land here has history, and not all history is good." "What do you mean?" asked Sharon, intrigued. "Your great-aunt Beatrice was a very private woman. In her later years, she kept talking about hidden treasures and things from the past. A lot of people thought she had something valuable stored here." Sharon felt a chill down her spine. That would explain the interest of the strange people who kept showing up to watch the property. But if there really was something valuable hidden there, why hadn't her great-aunt mentioned anything in the inheritance? That night, after putting the children to bed, Sharon began to explore the barn more carefully. She used an old flashlight she had gotten in town and examined every corner of the structure. The wooden walls were thick and old, some planks darker and more worn than others. That's when she noticed something strange on one of the back walls. Some planks seemed to have been removed and put back, as the nails were newer than the original ones. Curious, she tried to push one of the boards and felt it had some give. She decided she would investigate further the next day. But before that, she needed to resolve the urgent situation with John Michael, who had spent the night coughing without being able to sleep properly. The next morning, she took the boy to the town doctor, spending the last dollars she had on the appointment and medicine. The doctor was clear. The child needed to get out of that dusty environment as soon as possible, or the respiratory problem could become chronic. "You need to find a place with better conditions for these children," said the doctor, a young and compassionate man. "I understand your situation, but their health is at risk." Sharon returned home devastated. How could she provide better conditions if she didn't even have money for food? The pressure of having to choose between her children's health and the only opportunity to have a roof over their heads was destroying her from the inside. It was in this moment of total desperation that she decided to investigate the suspicious wall in the barn more deeply. With Daniel's help, she managed to remove some planks and discovered an empty space behind the wood. It wasn't exactly a hiding place, but it seemed someone had deliberately sealed an opening that existed there. Using an old iron bar she found in the barn, she managed to open a larger hole. On the other side, there was a small, dark space. When she shone the flashlight inside, she saw it was a secret compartment containing a dusty wooden box. With hands trembling from anticipation and fear, Sharon pulled the box out. It was heavy and had an old lock, but the wood was so old that she managed to force it open. Inside, she found a collection of yellowed documents, some old photos, and a hand-drawn map. The documents were mostly old certificates and family papers, but the map immediately caught her attention. It was a detailed drawing of the farm, but with markings and symbols she couldn't understand. There were numbers written in various parts and drawings that seemed to indicate specific locations. One of the photos showed a young great-aunt Beatrice, posing next to an elegant man in front of what appeared to be the barn in its glory days. On the back of the photo there was a note, "With Colonel Augustus, 1954, before the Revolution." Sharon Mitchell didn't know the family history well, but she knew the region had gone through political conflicts in the 1950s and 1960s. Perhaps her great-aunt had lived through important events she was unaware of. Studying the map more carefully, she noticed a specific marking exactly where the barn stood. The symbol seemed to indicate that something was buried or hidden right there, perhaps under the floor. The next morning, while the children played outside, Sharon began to examine the barn floor. It was made of thick wooden planks that had withstood time, but some seemed looser than others. Following the map's indications, she identified the marked area and began testing each plank. One of them, when pressed, made a different sound, more hollow. Using improvised tools, she managed to lift it and discovered a hollowed-out space in the ground. It was as if someone had created a well-crafted underground hiding place. Climbing down carefully, Sharon discovered it was a small cellar dug into the earth. It was too low to stand in, but large enough to hold several wooden and metal boxes. Her heart raced with excitement and fear at the same time. The first box she opened was filled with old silver and gold coins. She had never seen so much money together, even if they were coins that probably weren't in circulation anymore. The second box contained jewelry, necklaces, rings, bracelets, and earrings from different eras and styles. But it was in the third box that she found the real treasure, dozens of art objects and antiques carefully wrapped in cloth. There were small sculptures, old silverware, ornate pocket watches, and other items that clearly had historical value. A handwritten inventory by her great-aunt was folded at the bottom of the last box. The list was detailed, describing each item, its origin, and an estimated value based on research Beatrice had done over the years. The numbers were impressive, even considering inflation. According to her great-aunt's notes, the collection had been formed over decades. Some items were family heirlooms, others had been acquired from traders passing through the region, and some had been entrusted to her by people who needed to hide their belongings during difficult periods of local political history. Sharon climbed back into the barn with her hands dirty from soil and her heart beating irregularly. She couldn't believe what she had found. If the values estimated by her great-aunt were correct, she had inherited a fortune that could solve all her problems. But she also understood why strange people were lurking around the property. There were probably rumors in the area about Mrs. Beatrice's treasures. And now that the farm had a new owner, interested parties had started circulating again. "Mum, why are you dirty with soil?" asked Emily, running over when she saw Sharon come out of the barn. "Mommy was looking for something very important that your great-aunt hid for us, sweetie," she replied, still trying to process the discovery. "And did you find it?" asked Daniel, always more perceptive. "I think so, my son. I think our life is going to change very soon." That night, after putting the children to sleep, Sharon returned to the hiding place to better catalogue everything she had found. She used her great-aunt's notes as a guide and photographed each item with an old cell phone she had managed to buy used in town. She needed to be very careful. She couldn't just show up in town selling valuable antiques without raising suspicions or attracting ill-intentioned people. She had to find a legal and safe way to turn that treasure into real money. Researching online through the weak signal that reached the farm, she discovered there were antiques experts and auctions specializing in historical items, but she also found that the authentication and legal sale process could be time-consuming and complex. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. As she planned how to proceed, the external pressure increased. One day, a well-dressed man appeared at the farm gate introducing himself as an antique dealer. He said his name was Marcus Harrison and claimed to be interested in buying anything old she had inherited from her great-aunt. "I heard Mrs. Beatrice collected some interesting things," he said, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I can give a fair price for any item you wish to sell." Sharon, suspicious, said there was nothing of value on the property, just the old furniture in the barn. But the man insisted, even offering to buy the entire farm for a sum that, although low, would solve the issue of the overdue taxes. "You have small children in a place without proper conditions," insisted Marcus. "I can solve all your problems today." The pressure was so great that Sharon almost accepted on the spot, but something about the man's behavior alerted her. He knew too many details about the property and about her great-aunt, details she herself was unaware of. This made her suspect he had privileged information about the treasure. Politely refusing the offer, she said she needed time to think. Marcus did not like the answer and walked away with a poorly disguised expression of irritation. But before leaving, he left a card and said he would return in a few days. That night, Sharon couldn't sleep. She was sure she had made the right decision, but knew things would get complicated. If Marcus knew about the treasure's existence, others might too. The next morning, she decided to seek legal help. She went to town and consulted the only lawyer in the area, Dr. Henry Carter, an honest, middle-aged man who knew the old families of the region well. "Doctor, I need guidance on how to proceed with an inheritance that may have historical value," she explained, without going into specific details. "If they are valuable antique objects, you need to do everything by the book," warned the lawyer. "There is specific legislation regarding historical heritage, and any irregularity can cause serious problems." Dr. Henry offered to help her with the process, but made it clear that it would be necessary to involve experts and that it could take months to resolve everything legally. He also warned about the importance of maintaining secrecy until everything was settled. Back at the farm, Sharon found Mrs. Dorothy waiting with a worried expression on her face. "Dear, strange people have been asking about you in town," said the lady. "They're saying you inherited more than a rundown farm." "What else are they saying?" asked Sharon, feeling her heart race. "Some people are saying Mrs. Beatrice hid a fortune here and that you might be rich without knowing it. Be careful, because this will attract dangerous people." The confirmation of her fears made Sharon decide to speed up the process. She discreetly contacted an antiques expert from Tulsa, the capital, and scheduled a consultation to evaluate some items. She selected smaller and less valuable pieces to not arouse too much interest initially. The expert, Professor Marcus Anthony Mitchell, was impressed with the quality and authenticity of the items she brought. He confirmed they were genuinely antique pieces of considerable value, but cautioned that a formal appraisal process would be needed to determine exact values. "You have a very interesting collection," said the professor. "Some of these pieces are rare and could interest museums or private collectors. But it's important to do everything transparently and legally." Encouraged by the positive assessment, Sharon initiated the formal process. She hired Dr. Henry Carter to handle the legal aspects and authorized a full appraisal of the collection by a team of experts. During this period, which lasted almost 2 months, she had to deal with increasing pressures. Marcus Harrison returned 3 times, always more insistent, even making veiled threats about the consequences of keeping a treasure without proper protection. "You are being reckless," he said on the 3rd visit. "There are people out there who won't ask if you want to sell or not. They'll simply take what they want." The threats made Sharon seek out the local authorities, but the town sheriff said he couldn't do anything until an actual crime was committed. He suggested she take extra care and install some kind of security on the property. With some of the money she obtained by selling a few lower-value antique coins, Sharon hired a night guard from town, Mr. Jacob, a retired former military man who stayed on the property from 6 in the evening until 6 in the morning. Mr. Jacob's presence discouraged the appearances of the curious, but Sharon knew it was a temporary solution. She urgently needed to finalize the sale of the collection and get out of that vulnerable situation. The children, initially excited about the possibility of a change in the family's situation, began to show anxiety with all the tension surrounding the property. John Michael, whose breathing problem had improved a bit, started having trouble sleeping again. Daniel, always attentive, asked his mother directly if they were in danger. "We're going through a difficult phase, son, but soon everything will be resolved," she replied, trying to convey a confidence she didn't always feel. "Did you really find a treasure like the people in town are saying?" insisted the boy. "I found some things that Great-Aunt Beatrice left for us, yes, and that will allow us to have a better life." "Then why are you always worried?" Her son's direct question made Sharon realize she wasn't managing to hide the tension from the children. She decided to be more transparent, explaining simply that they had inherited valuable things, but that she needed to sort everything out correctly before they could enjoy them. Meanwhile, the appraisal process advanced. The team of experts confirmed that Great-Aunt Beatrice's collection was exceptional. It included pieces from different historical periods, some with considerable artistic value, and others with regional historical importance. The final report indicated a total value that surpassed all of Sharon's expectations. It was enough money not only to resolve the farm's debts, but to completely transform the family's life. She could renovate the property, give the children a quality education, and still have enough left over to ensure a stable future. The sale was organized through specialized auctions and direct sales to museums and collectors. The process lasted another 3 months, a period during which Sharon lived on an emotional roller coaster between hope and anxiety. Marcus Harrison made one last attempt to intervene, offering to buy the entire collection for half its market value, claiming he could resolve everything quickly without red tape. When Sharon definitively refused, he left with an expression of anger that left her even more concerned. Fortunately, the sales went through without major issues. Dr. Henry Carter managed to negotiate excellent terms, and Sharon Mitchell found herself for the first time in her life with abundant financial resources. Her first step was to pay off all the farm's debts and get the documentation in order. Then she began a complete renovation of the property. She hired a construction company to build a new house on the site of the old main residence, preserving the barn as a historical building. The renovation lasted 6 months and transformed the farm into a completely different place. The new house had all the modern comforts: electricity, running water, internet, and even air conditioning for the hottest days. The barn was restored and turned into a space for family memories. The children were dazzled by the transformation. John Michael fully recovered from his respiratory problems in the clean, well-maintained environment. Daniel began helping with managing the property, showing an interest in agriculture. Emily discovered a love for animals when Sharon bought some cows and chickens. The twins adapted perfectly to country life, and little Mary Catherine grew up healthy and happy. Mrs. Dorothy became a close friend of the family and often visited the new house, always commenting on the impressive transformation she had witnessed. "My dear, when you arrived here with these children, I didn't think you'd last a month," she said, laughing. "Look at what you've built." Sharon also invested in the local community. She created a small cultural center in the restored barn, where part of the remaining collection was on display for visitors. The place became a point of tourist interest in the region, generating additional income and jobs for people from town. The story of the treasure farm spread through the region and even got coverage in Tulsa newspapers. Sharon became a minor local celebrity, known for her determination and the responsible way she had handled the unexpected inheritance. A few years later, Marcus Harrison was arrested in another city for trying to illegally purchase stolen historical artifacts. The news confirmed Sharon's suspicions that she had made the right decision in refusing his offers. Dr. Henry Carter became the family's permanent lawyer and a great friend. Professor Marcus Anthony Mitchell continued as a consultant for matters related to the cultural center. Mr. Jacob was hired as the property's permanent caretaker. Daniel graduated with a degree in agricultural engineering and returned to manage the farm, implementing modern, sustainable farming techniques. Emily became a veterinarian and cared for the animals in the region. The twins followed different paths. John Michael became a teacher, and Joseph Andrew became an entrepreneur in the city. Mary Catherine, who barely remembered the difficult times, grew up in a reality completely different from what her siblings had known. She studied at good schools and had all the opportunities Sharon could never have dreamed of providing. Beatrice Farm became a model property in the region. Sharon diversified the investments, creating everything from dairy cattle farming to organic crops that supplied the area. The cultural center continued to attract visitors interested in local history. During one of the cultural center's annual exhibitions, Sharon received a visit from a university researcher who was studying the region's political history in the 1950s and 1960s. He brought documents that revealed fascinating details about Great-Aunt Beatrice's past. "Your great-aunt was a very important figure in the democratic resistance of the time," the researcher explained. "She helped protect the assets and documents of people persecuted by the military regime. That's why she maintained a network of contacts and knew so much about historical objects." The revelation gave even more meaning to the legacy Sharon had received. It wasn't just a material treasure, but the result of a life dedicated to preserving history and helping people in need. Inspired by this discovery, Sharon expanded the cultural center to include a section dedicated to the history of democratic resistance in the region. The place began to receive students and researchers from various universities. Years later, as she was turning 50, Sharon reflected on the extraordinary journey her life had taken. From a desperate single mother living in a rented room, she had become a successful rural entrepreneur and a respected figure in the community. Her 5 children had grown up with solid values, quality education, and opportunities she had never had. All had become responsible and successful adults, each in their own way. The farm continued to prosper, but more important than the financial success was the legacy of perseverance and dignity she had built for the family. The difficulties of the past had become valuable lessons that guided all her decisions. Marcus Harrison, who had tried to take advantage of her vulnerability, remained in prison. The local community had learned to value its historical heritage and protect itself from outside exploiters. The cultural center at Beatrice Farm had become a regional reference for historical memory preservation. It received visits from schools, universities, and tourists interested in both the collection and the family's story of overcoming adversity. During the celebrations of the 10th anniversary of the treasure's discovery, Sharon organized a big party at the farm. She invited all the people who had helped her along the journey: Mrs. Dorothy, Dr. Henry Carter, Professor Marcus Anthony Mitchell, Mr. Jacob, and many other people from the community. "When I arrived here with the children, I only had hope and determination," she said in her speech. "Today I realize that was more valuable than any treasure I found in the barn." The party lasted into the night, with regional music, traditional dances, and many stories shared. The local children played in the same spot where years before Sharon's 5 children had arrived, frightened and uncertain about the future. Daniel, now a grown man and a father himself, reflected on how his mother's courage had transformed not only their lives, but the entire surrounding community. The farm had become a symbol that it was possible to start over and build something beautiful even in the most adverse circumstances. Emily, who had become a respected veterinarian, often told her children about the first days on the farm, when there wasn't even a working bathroom. She wanted them to understand the value of what they had and never forget where they came from. The twins, despite having taken different paths, maintained close ties with the farm and always returned for family festivities. They were aware that their opportunities for study and professional growth were a direct result of their mother's courage and determination. Mary Catherine, the youngest who had grown up in prosperity, developed a special interest in the family history and began helping with the administration of the cultural center. She ensured that the memory of Great-Aunt Beatrice was properly preserved and honored. The property continued to expand sustainably. Sharon never lost sight of the importance of balancing economic progress with environmental and social responsibility. The farm became a model of sustainable rural development in the region. Great-aunt Beatrice's legacy went far beyond the material treasure she had left hidden. Her courageous choices during difficult periods in the nation's history had created a heritage of values and principles that continued to inspire generations. Sharon Mitchell established a family foundation that offered scholarships to underprivileged youth in the region. She wanted to ensure that other children had the educational opportunities she had only been able to provide for her own children after the discovery of the treasure. The scholarship program became one of the most respected initiatives in the area. Many young people who had benefited returned to contribute to their communities, creating a virtuous cycle of development and social progress. During one of the annual scholarship award ceremonies, a young woman who had graduated from medical school thanks to the program gave a moving speech about how the opportunity had transformed not only her life, but the life of her entire family. "Mrs. Mitchell taught us that education is the greatest treasure anyone can receive," said the young doctor, "and now it is our responsibility to pay it forward." These words deeply touched Sharon, who realized that the true value of her great-aunt's inheritance was not in the antique objects, but in the opportunity to transform lives and communities. As the years passed, the story of Beatrice Farm became increasingly well known. Journalists from different states came to document the transformation of the property and the social impact of the projects developed there. A documentary about the story was produced by a television station in Dallas, showing everything from the arrival of the desperate family to the consolidation of the social projects. The program had high ratings and brought even more visitors to the cultural center. Sharon always made a point of showing visitors the original barn, now restored but retaining its historical characteristics. She explained how she had discovered the treasure and emphasized that the most important thing had been the courage not to give up during the most difficult times. "My great-aunt's treasure gave me financial resources," she would often say, "but the real treasure was discovering that we can overcome any difficulty when we have determination and do not lose hope." The Cultural Center began offering educational workshops for children and teenagers, teaching everything from traditional craft techniques to concepts of historical and environmental preservation. The programs were always in high demand by schools from across the region. 15 years after the discovery of the treasure, Sharon received an honor from the City Council of St. Rose Creek for her services to the community's development. The ceremony took place in the town's central square, with state officials and hundreds of people from the region in attendance. "Sharon Mitchell represents the best of the Oklahoman spirit," said the mayor in his speech. "She transformed an unexpected inheritance into an opportunity for development for all of us." Her 5 children, now successful adults, were present at the ceremony. They were all aware that their personal achievements were part of a larger story of overcoming adversity and social transformation. Daniel had become one of the most respected farmers in the region, always willing to share knowledge about sustainable agriculture with other producers. His property was visited by students and technicians interested in his innovations. Emily had established a veterinary clinic that provided free care for animals belonging to low-income families. She always said she was repaying the opportunities she had received when she needed them most. John Michael, the teacher, developed a rural teaching methodology that was adopted by several schools in the region. His pedagogical techniques valued local traditional knowledge while introducing modern concepts. Joseph Andrew had created a rural tourism company that took visitors to see model properties in the region, always including Beatrice Farm on the itinerary. His business generated income for dozens of local families. Mary Catherine, a history graduate, had specialized in museum studies and professionally managed the cultural center. Under her leadership, the place had become a national reference for rural heritage preservation. The family's second generation was also growing up with social awareness. Sharon Mitchell's grandchildren attended the same public schools that received support from the Family Foundation, learning from an early age to value equality and solidarity. During the family gatherings, which took place monthly at the farm, Sharon liked to tell her grandchildren about the first difficult days when they didn't even have electricity. The children listened to the stories with fascination, barely able to imagine what that time had been like. "Grandma, weren't you scared?" asked one of the granddaughters during one of these conversations. I was very scared, yes, Sharon answered honestly, but I was even more afraid of giving up and not being able to take care of my children. These family conversations became a precious tradition, ensuring that the values of perseverance and solidarity were passed on to the new generations. The success of Beatrice Farm inspired other properties in the region to develop similar projects in cultural tourism and social responsibility. The region gained state recognition as a sustainable rural tourism destination. Sharon was invited to participate in conferences on rural development in various state capitals across the country. She always accepted the invitations, seeing them as opportunities to inspire other people not to give up on their dreams. Each of us has a hidden treasure waiting to be discovered, she would say in her talks. Sometimes it's a talent, sometimes it's an opportunity, sometimes it's just the courage to start over. But it's always there, waiting for us to have the courage to look for it. Sharon's words resonated especially strongly with the female audience, particularly women facing difficulties similar to those she had lived through. Many would approach her after the talks to share their own stories and seek advice. One such woman, also a single mother with young children, sought out Sharon after a talk in Tulsa. She was going through financial difficulties and didn't know how to start over. How did you find the strength not to give up in the hardest moments? She asked. By looking at my children and remembering they deserved a better life, Sharon replied. When we focus on something bigger than our fears, we find courage we didn't even know we had. Conversations like this confirmed for Sharon that her story had gained a purpose much greater than her family. She had become a symbol of hope for people facing seemingly impossible situations. The Family Foundation expanded its programs to include guidance and support for single mothers in distress. The project offered everything from vocational training to psychological and legal guidance for women who needed to rebuild their lives. 20 years after the discovery of the treasure, Beatrice Farm had become an institution in the region. The cultural center received over 10,000 visitors a year, and the social programs benefited hundreds of families. Sharon, now a grandmother of 12 grandchildren, remained active in managing the property and the social projects. At 58, she maintained the energy and determination that had helped her overcome the most difficult moments. During an interview for a national television program about stories of overcoming adversity, she was asked what had been the most important moment in her entire journey. The most important moment was when I decided not to accept the first offer to sell the farm, she said. I was desperate, scared, with no money. It would have been so easy to accept and solve the immediate problems. But something told me there was a bigger reason for me being there. And was there? Asked the interviewer. There was, but it wasn't the treasure I initially thought. The reason was discovering that I was stronger than I imagined, and that I could use that strength not just for my family but to help other people too. The interview aired on a Tuesday night and generated a huge response. Sharon received hundreds of messages from people across the country, sharing their own stories of overcoming hardship and thanking her for the inspiration. Among the messages, one especially moved her. It was from a woman from the interior of Maranhão who had watched the program with her young children and decided not to give up on a small piece of land she had inherited from her grandmother. Mrs. Sharon, you taught me that inheritance isn't just what we receive, but what we do with what we receive. I will fight for my little piece of land, and who knows, maybe I'll also discover my treasure, the letter said. Messages like this confirmed that the story of Beatrice Farm had transcended its geographical boundaries and become a source of national inspiration. The Foundation's scholarship program had already benefited more than 500 young people over the years. Many had graduated from universities and returned to contribute to the development of the region. The farm had become a true hub for social transformation. During the celebrations for the 20th anniversary of the treasure's discovery, Sharon organized a large exhibition at the Cultural Center, bringing together stories of all the people who had been impacted by the farm's projects. Testimonials, photos, and documents were collected that told the story of the region's transformation. When I found my great-aunt's treasure, I thought I had discovered gold and silver, she said at the exhibition's opening. Today, I realize the real treasure has always been the people, my children, my grandchildren, our community, and all the lives we've managed to touch in some way. The exhibition attracted visitors from several states and was documented by researchers interested in studying models of rural development based on family and community initiatives. One wall of the exhibition was dedicated entirely to photos of the young people who had benefited from the scholarship program. Doctors, engineers, teachers, veterinarians, entrepreneurs, all smiling proudly at their graduations, representing dreams fulfilled and promising futures. Daniel, who now managed the farm's agricultural operations, had implemented an organic farming program that became a model for other properties. Beatrice Farm's products were sold with organic certification and had guaranteed demand in supermarkets in 3 states. Emily had expanded her veterinary clinic and created a preventive veterinary medicine program for small rural producers. Her work had contributed significantly to improving the quality of the regional livestock and increasing the income of rural families. John Michael had become the director of the municipal school and implemented innovative educational programs that attracted the attention of educators from other regions. His pedagogical approach integrated traditional knowledge with modern technologies. Joseph Andrew had expanded his rural tourism company and created a network connecting several properties in the region. The project generated income for dozens of families and helped to value the local culture and history. Mary Catherine had completed her master's degree in museology and was developing a thesis on the preservation of rural memory. Her research used the experience of the farm's cultural center as a case study for other similar initiatives. The family's second generation was growing up immersed in values of social responsibility and sustainability. Sharon Mitchell's grandchildren actively participated in the farm's projects, each contributing according to their skills and interests. One of the grandchildren, still a teenager, had created a blog documenting the farm's activities and sharing information about sustainable agriculture and historical preservation. The blog attracted readers from across the country interested in rural development. During a monthly family meeting, Sharon announced her decision to write a book telling the entire story of the treasure's discovery and the farm's transformation. She wanted to officially document the journey so others could be inspired and learn from her experiences. "Many people ask me to tell my story," she explained. "I think the time has come to put it all on paper so it can help even more people." The idea was met with enthusiasm by the whole family. Everyone offered to contribute their own perspectives and memories of the different moments of the journey. The book took 2 years to complete, with the help of a professional writer who managed to faithfully capture Sharon's voice and personality. The work was published by a publisher in Tulsa and quickly became a regional bestseller. From the little room to the farm, a story of faith and perseverance detailed the entire family journey, from the days of extreme hardship to the consolidation of the social projects at Beatrice Farm. The book included historical photographs, original documents found in the great-aunt's treasure, and testimonies from people who had benefited from the Foundation's programs. It was both a personal biography and a historical account of rural development in the United States. The publication generated invitations for Sharon to participate in literary fairs and academic events in various state capitals. She always accepted, seeing each opportunity as a chance to inspire more people and promote the Foundation's social programs. During the book launch in Dallas, a young journalist asked what advice she would give to someone facing difficulties similar to those she had experienced. "First, never give up," she replied. "Second, remember that every difficulty is temporary, but our ability to overcome is permanent. And third, when things get better, don't forget to help those who are still struggling." The book's sales contributed to further expanding the Foundation's programs. A second edition was released with a national print run, bringing the story of Beatrice Farm to readers across the country. Rave reviews appeared in major newspapers and magazines, highlighting not only the personal story of overcoming, but also the sustainable development model created on the farm. A literary critic from Houston wrote, "Sharon Mitchell reminds us that heroism is not only in grand gestures, but in the daily courage of not giving up, and in the wisdom of turning personal victories into collective benefits." Comments like this confirmed that the story had touched a sensitive point in American society, inspiring discussions about perseverance, solidarity, and social responsibility. 25 years after the treasure's discovery, Sharon received the title of Honorary Citizen of St. Rose Creek. The ceremony took place in the town hall chamber, packed with representatives from the entire region. Sharon Mitchell transformed not only her own life, but our entire city, said the mayor. She proved that one determined person can change an entire community. During her acceptance speech, Sharon reflected on the extraordinary journey she had lived. When I arrived here with my 5 small children, I only had fear and hope, she said. Today I understand that was all I needed. Enough fear to keep me alert, and enough hope to keep me moving. The audience was moved by her words, especially when she thanked all the people who had helped along the way. From Mrs. Dorothy, who had offered milk for the children in the early days, to the young people now managing the Foundation's programs. No one succeeds alone, she emphasized. Every success is collective, built with the help of generous people who believe in our dreams, even when we ourselves doubt them. Beatrice Farm had become a regional symbol of sustainable development and social responsibility. It received delegations from other regions interested in replicating the model of integration between economic activity and social programs. An academic study conducted by Oklahoma State University documented the farm's socio-economic impact on the region, concluding that the programs had contributed significantly to poverty reduction and the improvement of local educational indicators. The numbers were impressive. Over 1,000 people had been directly benefited by the Foundation's programs, hundreds of young people had received scholarships, and dozens of families had improved their income through organic farming and rural tourism programs. But for Sharon, the statistics were merely a reflection of something much deeper, the transformation of individual lives and the strengthening of an entire community. During a visit by the state governor to the farm, he commented on the possibility of turning the experience into public policy for other rural regions. The Beatrice Farm model could be replicated in several areas of the state, he said. You have created something extraordinary here. Sharon was flattered by the proposal, but also cautious. She knew that the farm's success did not depend solely on financial resources, but mainly on personal commitment and the family values that had guided all decisions. We will be happy to share our experience, she replied. But the most important things are not the structures we built, but the values that sustain them: perseverance, solidarity, and commitment to collective development. The conversation with the governor resulted in the creation of a state program to support sustainable rural development initiatives. Beatrice Farm was chosen as a reference and training center for other similar projects. Consultants from the farm began traveling throughout the state, offering training and guidance to families and communities interested in developing similar projects. It was a way of multiplying the positive impact far beyond the borders of the original property. Daniel took over the technical coordination of these expansion programs, taking his knowledge of sustainable agriculture to other regions. Emily contributed with guidance on animal husbandry and preventive veterinary medicine. John Michael developed educational materials adapted to different regional realities, always maintaining the focus on integrating traditional knowledge with modern techniques. Joseph Andrew helped communities structure responsible rural tourism programs. Mary Catherine coordinated the preservation of memory and the creation of community cultural centers, teaching other families to value and document their own stories. The second and third generations of the family grew up seeing social transformation work as something natural and necessary. For them, using personal success to benefit the community was not charity, but responsibility. One of Sharon's great-grandchildren, still a child, once asked during a family meeting, "Great-grandma, why do we help so many people?" "Because when we find the treasure, we discover it only has value if it is shared," she replied. "Wealth kept only for ourselves does not make us truly happy. But if we donate everything, won't we become poor again?" "No, my dear. The more we share knowledge and opportunities, the more they multiply. It's different from money, which shrinks when we divide it. Education and solidarity grow when they are shared." Conversations like this ensured that core values were passed down to the new generations, keeping the essence of the project alive even as decades passed. At 65, Sharon Mitchell decided to gradually step back from the direct management of the businesses to dedicate herself more to writing and motivational speaking. She had completed a second book focused specifically on sustainable rural development strategies. The farm was now managed collectively by her children, each responsible for a specific area, but always making important decisions together. It was a family management model that ensured the continuity of the original values and objectives. During the administration transition ceremony, held at the farm's cultural center, Sharon gave an emotional speech about the legacy she was leaving. "The treasure I found in Great-Aunt Beatrice's barn gave me the resources to begin," she said. "But the real treasure we've built here is all of you. My children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and our entire community. That is a treasure that can never be stolen or lost." The audience, made up of family, farm employees, beneficiaries of the social programs, and local authorities, was moved by her words. Daniel, officially assuming the presidency of the family administration, thanked his mother for everything she had built and assured her that the values and principles would remain unchanged. "Our mother taught us that true success is when our victory helps other people win too," he said. "That will continue to be our mission." The event was covered by journalists from various regions, interested in documenting this model of family succession based on solid social values. A special report was produced by a national network showing how a chance discovery had transformed into a story of lasting social change. The report featured interviews with several young people who had benefited from the scholarship programs over the years. Each told how the opportunity had changed not only their own lives but the lives of their entire families. A doctor who had graduated thanks to the foundation and now worked at the local health clinic said, "Mrs. Sharon didn't just pay for my studies. She taught me that education is a social responsibility, not a personal privilege." Testimonials like this confirmed that the impact of Beatrice Farm went far beyond statistical numbers, touching deep aspects of character formation and social awareness. The report also showed data on the socio-economic transformation of the region. Indicators for education, income, and quality of life had improved significantly over the past 2 decades, with direct contribution from the programs developed at the farm. This data attracted the attention of international researchers interested in studying sustainable development models based on family initiatives. Delegations from Latin American countries visited the farm to see the experience firsthand. During one such visit, a representative from the United Nations organization commented on the possibility of the farm becoming an international reference center for sustainable rural development. "You have created something that goes beyond economic development," he said. "It is a model of integral human development that should be studied and replicated in other parts of the world." The proposal flattered the family, but Sharon kept her feet on the ground. She knew the farm's success was deeply connected to the specific characteristics of the local community and the historical circumstances that had shaped its experience. "We will be happy to share our experience with anyone who wants to learn," she said. "But every community needs to find its own path, based on its own history and values." This practical wisdom was one of the traits that most impressed visitors and researchers. Sharon Mitchell had managed to maintain humility and a connection to the local reality, despite all the national and international recognition she had received. Her grandchildren, now young adults, grew up with this balanced perspective. They studied at good universities, but always returned to contribute to the family projects, understanding that a quality education was a privilege that brought corresponding social responsibilities. One granddaughter, with a degree in business administration, developed a senior thesis on family management models based on social values, using the farm itself as a case study. Another grandson, an environmental engineering student, was developing a project to make the farm completely energy self-sufficient through renewable sources. The goal was to create an environmental sustainability model that could be replicated on other properties. The family's third generation showed the same passion for the social projects that had characterized Sharon and her children. They actively participated in the educational programs and contributed innovative ideas to expand the project's impact. During the monthly family meetings, which continued to be a sacred ritual, the younger generations presented creative proposals to modernize the programs without losing their original essence. One such proposal resulted in the creation of an online mentorship program that connected young scholarship recipients with successful professionals from various fields. The program significantly expanded the reach of the educational projects. Another initiative developed by the grandchildren was an app that allowed program beneficiaries to share their experiences and help each other. The tools strengthened the network of solidarity created around the farm. 30 years after the discovery of the treasure, Sharon was invited to receive a special tribute during the centennial celebration of St. Rose Creek. The town organized a week of festivities celebrating its history and development. "Sharon Mitchell represents the best of our people," said the mayor during the ceremony. "She proved that with determination and solidarity, we can transform our reality and build a better future for everyone." The tribute included the inauguration of a plaza named after Sharon and her great-aunt Beatrice, recognizing the importance of both to the town's history. A symbolic statue in the center of the plaza depicted a mother with children looking toward the future with hope. During her speech at the ceremony, Sharon reflected on the extraordinary journey she had lived. "When I arrived here 30 years ago, I was just a desperate mother trying to save her children from poverty," she said. "Today I understand that I didn't come here just to find a treasure, but to learn that the true treasure has always been the people I love and the community that welcomed me." Her words moved the crowd present at the ceremony. Many people in the audience had been directly benefited by the farm's programs or knew someone who had been helped. The ceremony also marked the launch of a documentary about the 30 years since the treasure's discovery. The film showed rare footage of the family's first days on the farm and followed the development of all the projects over the decades. One of the most moving scenes in the documentary showed the exact spot where the great-aunt's treasure had been found, now transformed into a small museum within the cultural center. The space preserved the memory of the discovery and educated visitors about the importance of perseverance and social transformation. The documentary was screened at film festivals and received awards for its sensitive and inspiring approach. Distributors from various regions of the country bought the broadcasting rights, taking the story to even larger audiences. A film school in Houston used the documentary as teaching material in courses on documentary narrative and stories of overcoming adversity. Journalism students from several universities visited the farm to understand how to properly document social transformation projects. Beatrice Farm had become much more than a successful rural property. It was a national symbol that it is possible to turn adversity into opportunity and use personal success to benefit an entire community. At 70 years old, Sharon Mitchell remained active and healthy, dividing her time between writing, motivational speaking, and guiding the Foundation's projects. She had published a third book specifically aimed at single mothers in difficult situations. A Mother's Courage: How to Turn Despair into Hope, combined her personal experience with practical advice and testimonials from other women who had overcome similar situations. The book became a national reference in self-help literature and women's empowerment. The work was adopted by government social assistance programs and non-governmental organizations working with women in vulnerable situations. Workshops based on the book were held in several cities across the country. During one of these workshops in Phoenix, a participant asked Sharon what had been the most difficult moment in her entire journey. "The most difficult moment was when I discovered my son had respiratory problems because of the farm's conditions," she answered. "I had to choose between giving up our dream to protect his health or risking everything, believing I could improve our situation in time." "And how did you make the decision?" "I talked with my children. I explained the situation honestly and asked them what they wanted to do. They chose to stay and fight alongside me. That's when I realized I wasn't alone in that battle." Answers like these deeply touched the workshop participants, many of whom faced similar dilemmas between immediate security and future possibilities. The workshops became an important extension of the Foundation's work, offering not only inspiration, but also practical strategies for women who needed to rebuild their lives. A national network of volunteers trained by Sharon herself began replicating the workshops in their own communities, multiplying the program's reach far beyond the farm's individual capacity. This network of empowered women became a transformative force in hundreds of communities, always using the principles learned from the story of Beatrice Farm: perseverance, solidarity, and commitment to collective development. During an annual network meeting held at the farm, a coordinator from Oregon shared the results of her local work. "In 2 years, we managed to help 120 women restart their lives," she reported. "We used Mrs. Sharon's story as inspiration, but each one found her own path to transformation. Reports like this confirmed that the methodology developed at the farm could be adapted to different regional and cultural realities, always maintaining the essence of the core values. The national network had become an informal yet powerful social movement, connecting women from across the country through shared values and common goals of personal and social transformation. Researchers from international universities began studying this phenomenon as an example of how individual stories of overcoming adversity can transform into social movements for collective change. A study conducted by Stanford University documented the network's impact in various regions of the United States, concluding that it had created a new model of female empowerment based on horizontal solidarity and strong family values. The research attracted international attention and resulted in invitations for Sharon to participate in conferences on social development in several countries. She always accepted, seeing each opportunity as a chance to inspire people from other cultures. During a UN conference on rural women and sustainable development, Sharon received a standing ovation after telling her story. Representatives from dozens of countries were interested in learning more details about the programs developed at the farm. "Your story proves that true social transformation begins with individual courage," commented a delegate from South Africa. "But it also shows the importance of community support systems." Comments like this confirmed that the principles applied at Beatrice Farm were universal, even though they were deeply rooted in a specific American culture. Participation in international events also brought opportunities for cultural exchange and learning. Sharon visited similar projects in other countries and always returned with new ideas to improve the farm's programs. A partnership with an organization from Kenya resulted in the development of an exchange program that allows young beneficiaries of the foundation's scholarships to intern at rural development projects in Africa, broadening their perspectives and experiences. These international experiences significantly enriched the training of the young participants and brought new perspectives to the projects developed at the farm. One of the young people who participated in the exchange returned with innovative proposals for family farming programs that were implemented with great success in the region. Another brought ideas about solar energy that significantly reduced the farm's operational costs. 35 years after discovering the treasure, Sharon celebrated her 75th birthday with a large party at the farm. Representatives from all the programs that had been created over the decades attended, in an impressive demonstration of the reach of her influence. The party lasted 3 days and included exhibitions, cultural presentations, lectures, and much fellowship. It was both a personal celebration and a collective recognition of everything that had been built. During the main speech of the celebration, Sharon reflected on the profound meaning of her journey. "When I found my great-aunt's treasure, I thought I had discovered my salvation," she said. "Today I understand that was only the beginning of a much greater discovery. I learned that each of us has a unique treasure to offer the world, and our true happiness comes from discovering what that treasure is and how to share it." The audience, made up of hundreds of people of all ages and social backgrounds, was moved by her words. Many of those present owed their life opportunities to the courageous decisions she had made decades before. End of story. Now tell us, what did you think of this story of overcoming and transformation? Do you believe Sharon made the right decisions throughout her journey? Leave your opinion in the comments and share your own experiences of perseverance. If this story touched your heart, Don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other moving stories like this one. Your participation is very important to us.